Yo, what's going on, y'all? This is your boy DK Hammonds. I am here today with who I feel like is not an emerging voice, but one of the voices in the kingdom that everybody needs to be paying attention to. Pastor Reverend Krystal Berry. How you doing, Rev?
I'm all right. Reverend, how you doing? You good?
I'm good. I'm glad to be alive. I've been in a conference
Same,
call,
man. Really?
the National Religious Broadcaster Conference for all Christian communicators here in
Love it.
Dallas Metroplex, and having conversations centered around that has been intriguing, and we'll talk more offline about that. But that's what I've been doing.
Sure.
How are you?
I'm good, man. As the old folks say, I'm holding on. I'm yet
Holding
holding on. Our
on.
elders, rather, our elders would say I'm holding on. No, I'm good. Work is fascinating. Ministry is blossoming in new ways, and school is moving forward, it's advancing. So I'm good. I'm
So for those
good.
of y'all who don't know, Krystal Berry, she's a, I would say, a Texas native, but somebody else will probably try to claim she's from Texas.
That's fair though. I think I spent that's fair. I left Virginia in undergrad.
Yeah,
So I spent basically as much time in Virginia as I did in Houston.
yeah.
So I just kind of claim both spaces,
There we
you
go.
know.
There we go. So she's very familiar with those contexts. And tell the
Yeah.
people. I know some people don't know what you've been doing or where you've transitioned to. This is an opportunity to kind
Oh
of
man.
educate people
Yeah.
on your ministry and your work and what you're doing currently.
Yeah. Somebody said to me the other day, say, you just kind of slid off the face of the earth. I'm like, well, not really. I got locked out of Facebook. So
Yeah.
I don't even the page is deleted by now, so it is what it is. But no, so in August, I moved from Houston to North Carolina. I started a position here at Duke Divinity School as Associate Director of Black Church Studies, which has been a great opportunity for me. Not something I ever thought I'd be doing, but it's amazing. I got my work cut out for me, but this is good stuff. And so I'm glad to be here. And then on the flip side of that, when you move to a new space, there are different cultures you have to learn, right? So moving here, there was like trying to learn the culture of like North Carolina.
Yeah.
Then there was trying to learn the culture of like the big University of Duke. And then there's like the divinity school. So there are like all these different like levels and cultures and stuff to learn. So it's been cool. School is going well. I'm working through a THM degree, trying to get some better footing for PhD, my PhD programs.
Yeah.
I realized that I needed to go back and get some more work in Semitic languages.
Mm.
And so it's like going back and taking like Syriac and that sort of thing to kind of better my work
For sure.
for Old Testament studies. And then, like I said, watching ministry blossom, but my family is taking full advantage of me being back on the East Coast. So my mom will be like, "You coming home next weekend, Chrissy? We doing such and such and such." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll be home." You know what I mean? So they're taking full advantage of this whole East Coast thing. But I'm good. Everything is good.
That's great. That's great. Me and Chris go back, and I call her
Yeah,
Chris. Y'all can't call her Chris. Y'all make sure y'all voice it. But we
that's
go
right.
back. We go back,
Yeah,
and it's somebody I've always watched, admired her ministry and how things were kind of unfolding, and
I appreciate you, man.
always considered her to be a voice, not even emergent, a leading voice in this space. So
Mm,
let's talk about conversations around Black church, because that's
yeah,
kind of your bread and butter. What are
yeah.
you seeing in your space that we need to talk about, address, think through, maybe two or three things as it relates to Black church, or even how Black church is being impacted by the digital space as well? How you feel about that?
Mm. Well, I was telling somebody the other day we were having a conversation and we're just having a random conversation and talking about like chaplaincy,
Mm.
right? And I'm going somewhere with this, but we were talking about chaplaincy and we were talking about how a lot of people chaplaincy is on the rise in terms of people wanting to be connected spiritually because they don't want to go to church.
Mm.
So chaplaincy has seen like this, like elevation or this growth in recent years. And so I was telling them, one of the things I've noticed, particularly around like church, like the church is never going to die. Like the Lord's church is not going to die. It ain't going nowhere.
Yep.
But it's solid. But I think one thing we are seeing, or one thing that I am seeing, is like this emerging of like the early New Testament models of church, where people are like getting together in their homes.
Yes.
And stuff like that within their communities and things like that, which I think is a dope idea, right? Because it gives them a more intimate setting to discuss certain things. There are certain things that are still in 2025 that are still taboo. In church, right? And it's unfortunate, but there are some things that are just still taboo in church, and so they're seeking these smaller, intimate spaces to discuss these things. And I think there are two parts to that. I think it's great to have those spaces, and I think sometimes it might be able to even be a challenge to be in those spaces, because it really just depends on who's leading that space, right?
Yeah, for sure.
People are discipled by several things. They're discipled by music, they're discipled by media, they're discipled by movies, they're discipled by whatever conversations they come in contact with. And so I think there are some risks associated with, some of the smaller groups, but I do think there are some pros that are associated with that as well.
Oh, without a doubt. I'm seeing not necessarily the death of movement when it comes to the megachurch model, but I am seeing people just have a preference for something a little bit more intimate as it relates to their spiritual development. They're no longer invested in having a leader that sees them but don't know them. They want a leader that sees them, knows them, and almost call them by name. They're going back to that, a more personal approach to ministry. And so I'm seeing that. I'm also seeing how digital is impacting. I was telling a friend before I got on this podcast, telling them, hey man, y'all need to stop all these shouting videos. Enough.
DK, you did not tell them that. Why do people can't shout, DK?
Well, I didn't say the people can't shout. That's not what I said. I said,
all right. You said the videos.
These videos that lack context. That lack context.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Lack context.
I get that.
It just looks like we are having a party, and it's like, hey man, that doesn't translate well to emerging generations that don't know. And so we have to think about.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, now I was laughing with somebody. I was like, I feel like I'm a older millennial or whatever. I think I'm on that side.
Is what they call y'all.
Don't call me geriatric. Get your life. Get your life. Do not call me geriatric. Get yourself together. Get yourself together. Anyway. Call me
I'm old, so I'm cool being old.
You're older than me.
I'm cool being old.
No, whatever. So anyway, I'm on the older end of the millennial.
Yeah.
But I find myself like siding with some personality of Gen Z, because Gen Z really, it's interesting to see them like evolve, because they really have this like don't care attitude, right? Which I think is cool. I'm okay with it though. I'm okay with it, because they take risks that some of us millennials wouldn't take, right? Yeah. Like I'm okay with it, but I think to the point of like content and stuff like that, Gen Z is just so vocal. Like they will tell you if your stuff sucks. Like if they don't like it or they find problems with it, they will tell you. Like I remember sitting with some Gen Z at a church recently, and so we were talking about like the promotion videos, or like basically something like the announcements in church, right? Yeah. And they were basically like, no, the announcements are boring. Like we just kind of scroll through our phones, and maybe that's not necessarily generationally specific, but they were just like, no, it's not really, not really capturing. And I don't know if it's about entertainment or anything like that, but just like content in general, like, but they're very honest, even to the point of like sermons and stuff like that. Like Gen Z, they will Google you in church. They will Google your sermon in church. and like, get in their groups. Back in the day, they had like the AOL chat rooms.
Oh, no
Like,
doubt. No doubt. You're
they,
going to be
they
on the
treat,
group chat
they
before the
treat,
service is over.
right. Like they gonna get in their group chats and be like, nope, this is what the man said. Nope, I found it. This is not it. Right. So it's interesting to see their involvement with the church and how technology impacts or influences that.
Yeah. Technology impacts because, we can go to Sermon Central and pull up the scripture verse.
We still use Sermon Central?
Some people do.
But
if I wanted to research your sermon, I can pull it up.
Yeah.
And almost, because some of y'all are trifling, I'll use my platform.
Well, okay, DK, I have a question for you. So if we're talking about on the whys of sermons and intellectual property.
There we go.
Right.
IPs. Yes, sir.
We're talking about sermon and intellectual property.
Yep.
What is your feeling about intellectual property and sermons as it relates to the pastor who is preaching every Sunday, if that intellectual property belongs to him or if that intellectual property belongs to the church because he works for the church, he or she, right?
I like how you flip that. That's good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So intellectual property, and you'll hear us use this interchangeably, intellectual property and IP, as it relates to the prophetic witness or voice that is preaching in church. Here's the truth. The church in of itself, as a nonprofit entity, does not own a pastor's intellectual property.
Yeah.
Okay? And let me explain myself very clearly. You own the sound equipment, the video equipment, things of that nature, right?
Sure.
The moment that person begins to speak, the transfer of power happens then, and that pastor owns his or her intellectual property to do whatever they deem fit with it. Now, I know some churches are like, well, this happened in our church. I hear you, but if you go to the court of law, they're going to tell you, who's talking? He talking? This case is over with.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because I'm surprised that there are still, like, I ran into a situation, not personally, but just by way of talking to someone else. And they were basically saying how there was like a whole conversation about intellectual property as it related to them candidating for this particular church, being considered for this church. And somehow documented was this idea that, well, once you preach, that sort of thing, that property belongs to the church. It was interesting for me to hear that. So, I've never heard that, especially from a legal standpoint, but I thought it was interesting. I'm like, maybe they just think we stupid.
Well, I'm going to tell you what they think. What the thought process is behind it is, okay, if you're pastoring here, you're employed here. And so everything you do here belongs to us.
Yeah.
But that's the business CEO model.
Yeah.
Right? The problem that a lot of those tricky people, and I'm not going to say position or place or elders or deacons, I said, I don't care, it's my platform. The problem that they have is that they think they're smart and you're not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, if that person does legally sign that document, then you give up your right.
Then you're held to it. Right.
But I wouldn't sign a document. Let me give you an example. So I go to conferences and I speak at conferences periodically. And so it's one conference in particular that makes you sign a disclosure agreement that says that whatever you say here at this conference belongs to us because we're going to repurpose it, re-record it, etc. They tell me that before I come, right?
Yeah.
Then I have a choice to say I'm with that or I'm not. Usually, I don't care. You can have it because I'm probably going to bring my camera too, and I'm going to record me.
That makes sense.
Because that's my intellectual property. So if I'm a pastor or a leader or a thought leader, I'm saying to myself, okay, cool, you can record, but I'm going to record. Do you have a problem with me?
That makes sense.
That makes sure it's even. I'm not asking anything from you. So everywhere I go now, I have a Osmo 3 DJI. I take that with me. I put the microphone on top of the podium and I begin to speak. So I have my own intellectual property. and you can have that and do whatever you want to do with it. So that's what I would do in exchange for that. If you have that,
Yeah.
if you don't, please inbox me and I'll show you how to do that. Because what I would do also, when I can't take my DJI, I would hire a videographer. I would hire them to come where I'm at to record the session. That way, I already got it, and it doesn't belong to anybody but me. It's my intellectual property.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I would say. And preacher,
Yep.
pastor, if you're in that particular position, please don't sign over your rights, your
Right.
voice as a
Absolutely.
leader, because the most important thing outside of your voice, I'm gonna go down this road too since we're here. The most important thing
Yeah.
outside of a preacher's voice is the transcription, just like the
Yeah.
Bible. And so I can
Yeah.
use that transcription to do a myriad of things with on down the road. So the most important thing that you say is the word that you speak and the words that we record, because we can repurpose them. I'm at a place repurposing. I'm gonna say this. I'm repurposing off this podcast in 11 different ways.
Yeah.
So when I hit end,
Facts.
it's 11 different ways it's
Facts.
gonna get cut.
Facts.
So a
Yeah.
pastor or a leader can do the same exact thing if they know what they're doing with that. Yeah.
So one of the things I'm working on with there's a pastor that I'm working on this with is my personal belief is that specifically in the Black church, we have the ability to create our own curriculum
Yes.
dedicated specifically to our congregations. And what I mean by that is the sermons that get preached on Sunday, the series that are being done, that information has the potential to be turned into church-wide curriculum, right?
Yes.
You have people who write curriculum who sit in your congregations. You have people who are able to do like research that can help get a feel for what your congregation needs. We spend a lot of money buying books that don't speak to the whole of our congregations. And so we end up using bits and pieces and things like that. But I really think there is like, working with this particular pastor has just kind of like reignited like a passion that I have for writing. And I'm saying to myself, take the series that you have and create curriculum out of that. So when you start looking at Sunday school curriculum, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna call the name, but there's a particular publisher that Sunday school publisher that we use quite often. I'm not kidding. There's a particular Sunday school publisher that we use quite often, but the material is so predictable.
Yes.
Like it's so predictable. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, we have pastors who are giving incredible sermons and sermon series. Why not take that material? Why not take that information and create your own curriculum for Sunday school, Bible study, for vacation Bible school, whatever you want to do, your small group studies, that sort of thing, taking that information and creating your own curriculum, because we have it in our congregations. I'd rather not spend the money getting, books and things like that really don't speak to my people, and I think that's something that we could like lean into a little bit more in terms of like when we start talking about like sermons and things like that.
So I would say, because I work on a few of these projects already, I'm gonna give the master class right quick.
Okay.
Since we're going down this road.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use your use case as what we're gonna kind of build off of. So I got a pastor, you got a pastor. Hey pastor, you man, dope sermons, love them. We can expand this even further. All right. So now we're at a place where people are using their phones at a very high rate. So how could we take our phones and make them digital discipleship classes? How can we take computers, iPads, and make them discipleship classes? That way, discipleship is an ongoing process. Now, I do think that you get a lot more when it is in person. It does drive home. But equally, some people learn this way, and they just want to ask questions. So from there, I would determine that space. It doesn't need to exist on the website. Do we need to create a platform?
So that was my next thing, like how we're archiving information, because we don't have control over social media spaces. Like that's the one thing I am worried about with our churches. The one thing I am worried about is where we're archiving our stuff, because especially in political scenes like the one we're in now, we don't have control over these spaces. So at any point that they don't want our voice is out there, they're able to snatch our stuff. So Facebook is great. It's just not reliable. Instagram is great. It's not reliable. YouTube is obviously a lot more like liberal, that sort of thing. But
Yep.
even that it's not owned by us. You get what I'm saying? So I don't know where we are in like talking to our churches, and I say our churches because I love the Black church, but
Absolutely.
talking to our churches about how we're archiving our information, our services, all of those things, because we just don't. These other spaces are just not. They're not dependable. Flat out.
Let me continue down the process. I got you. I can tell you the process. It's gonna bless you.
You got the solution. You got the
Yeah,
solution.
yeah. I'm going. I don't know if I need to put this out because this is dope. But I'm gonna give you context here. It's good stuff.
Okay.
All right. So the process works like this. So pastor preachers, we're gonna have a various space that belongs to us that we own. Usually that space is gonna be on your website, embedded by a different technology. There's various technologies that already do this. So you have a Kajabi, you have
I never heard of that.
That's fine. You have Kajabi.
Put me on. I never heard of it.
You have Kajabi. You have Teachable. These things allow us to do our classes digitally, place them somewhere else to be archived, allow videos and quizzes and all the likes, and people can have almost a university experience. The shift is happening where these people that's in church don't necessarily trust seminaries or colleges. They do trust their local church. So the local church now is more responsible than ever to educate their people. So that's one way to do it, right? It's a lengthy process, but I know the process.
Is it economical though?
I feel like for a local church, yes. I feel like it's one of those fees you have to eat. I'm sorry. I know there's more responsibility we put on a local church. It's one of those fees you have to eat. Now,
so is this a we don't get new pews, you gotta eat, or
no,
or like
it's a monthly subscription.
Okay.
It's a monthly subscription.
Got it.
So it ain't one of those you got to pay $2,000 a month. No.
Okay.
It ain't going down that road. It's more so, I would say, between $29 and $100 a month, maybe.
It's not bad.
And you're going to be putting the information up there and providing the course and curriculum for people to learn. So imagine you going into a room for people to learn and be educated, and be educated. And so when you're educated at the same place, now we can walk through this together in this particular place. So imagine your baptism could be this, your baptism class could be this way, or your new membership orientation class could be this way, or whatever. And so I'm working on that with the church now. And we're doing this very same thing. So I can show people that, yes, Black people can also create a tool that their people can be resourced at any moment's notice. Now, the archival of conversation becomes very different because archiving happens in a myriad of ways. So I'm going to walk you through that. So if a person, once the pastor says, will you come? Do they invitation of discipleship feed cuts? We cut that feed on the back end. Some of us are taking that feed and put it on Dropbox. Some of the people are saying we don't put it on Dropbox, or we don't have it in a Google Drive. We just have it on Facebook, and that's how you archive it. That's absolutely the wrong way. And so you need to have a supportive way. So there are various tools, like if you're using Resi has a library function that categorizes these videos. And this way you never lose the videos as long as you have Resi. And then you use your backup, which is the Dropbox or the Googles or whatever the case may be, to then have your sermons archived. And if I'm a pastor, I'm going to lean into my camera. If I'm a pastor.
Lean in, pastor.
I'm saying I need to know this process. And I need to know it well because, see, y'all used to have tapes. I grew up with tapes, with cassette tapes. And they would have these cassette tapes in their office like tennis shoes. Like I got tennis shoes in my closet.
No. It was a whole shoebox full of
Yeah. And so that was your archive. So now we're in a digital space, and you got to be thinking, if I leave this world, what's the imprint I want to leave so people can still be educated and learn from my voice? I just gave you the whole process just a moment ago. So that's how you would do it.
No, I like it. I think, like, again, one concern that really came out of, I think I've always had that concern, but one big concern that really came out of this last election was just like, if they cut all this stuff off and try to suppress our voices, and they've already started suppressing Black voices in several ways, but the church they're definitely coming for the church. We see
Without a doubt.
how they come out to, pastors like, Pastor Jamal Bryant, the Kojic Church, whatever. So we've seen them, how they can attack the Black church. So again, my interest was in the best interest of the church and how we
Yeah.
are able to archive this information.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
got to always be thinking of ways to protect, back to the initial, the intellectual property of both the Black church and the Black preacher, or the preacher or the church,
Absolutely.
however you want to categorize your category.
Absolutely.
You have to be
Absolutely.
thinking of that. And if you are not thinking of it, if you're a small church, you are saying, man, let me pull this video and put this video on a jump drive so I'll always have it and I can always go to it. Equally, it's
Sure.
helpful because now you can say, okay, if you got a sermon or you got a series or you got something, we can draw from that. Now we got books. Now we got classes. Now we got this. We
Listen,
got a whole lot of stuff we can do.
it's so much stuff that can come from that. Those 20, 30, 40 minutes can become so
Come on.
much more.
Come on.
Can become so much more. Even down to our writing. Like, I'm
Yes.
so passionate about writing because we have to preserve our voices in
Yes.
different ways. Like, our
Yes.
voices have to be preserved in different ways. So getting back to writing, and I know it can be time consuming, right? Everybody doesn't have time to just kind of sit down and write. But I tell people all the time, like, one, you can take, we have voice recording, platforms, that sort of thing. Sometimes it's just about talking about how you feel, just talking through certain things. And then you have platforms that transcribe what you say, you know what I mean? And somebody can go in and edit that information, and bam, like you looking at a book. I remember one sister I was working with, golden sister, but writing was not her thing at all. And it was very apparent. But we literally sat down and had a series of like maybe 8 or 9 conversations. Took those conversations, they were probably about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes apiece. Took those conversations, they were recorded, transcribed them in Otter AI, went through and edited what Otter had already done, and then did another edit so that we could turn these conversations into chapters, went through and edited so that it had a good flow to it, right? So that it was readable for the public, for the people who don't know the story, went through and edited all of that and created a book, right? Book did well in her, and for her community, it was like the story of her sons and her journey with her sons and stuff like that. But just going through those steps. And my thing is, like, even if, you don't have to, it's not the old school sit by, a lampshade or sit by a lamp and, have an inkwell and write out your book. It can be a lot more simple. It can be a lot simpler than that. But I think just taking the time to like actually do those things is helpful. Yeah.
My sister has just plugged her business, and I definitely want you to speak about that later.
Oh,
We
Lord.
definitely got to let the people know how they can follow that process, because she just gave you the game in terms of, at least, like, I'm writing a relationship book.
Yeah.
But I'm also putting out the video.
You writing a relationship book, BK?
I am.
What is it about? You gonna tell the people?
I don't have no problem. It's about 28 days of love,
Okay.
church, and relationships. I'm literally taking this is my 3rd book, so I'm taking what I'm already said and expanding the thought to make it more
I like
clear,
it.
to be something that you can just follow, right? So you have my
I love it.
videos and you have my book, and you can follow
Love
how
it.
to have a better relationship that is Christian centric. Because a lot of y'all be listening to these clowns that make you want to pop balloons.
Who are the clowns,
Nonsense.
DK?
If I knew their name, the pop the balloon, I call their names. The pop the balloon crazy is nuts to me, but because I call their name. Hey, that's coming out after this series. Links will be available, but we're at the 30-minute marker. Reverend Bear, tell the people how they can follow you, how they can learn more about your writing, and and book writing and things of that nature. Tell the people what they can do that.
So, my current social media platforms, on Threads, TikTok, and Instagram right now, you can follow me at ChryssyGale_KB. I told you that Facebook has given me the boot, so we're trying to decide if we want to go back to Facebook or not. DK says I need to go back to Facebook, but we're gonna see what the Lord says. 'Cause
Yes.
I'm over Facebook right now. But yeah, you can follow me there. And then I'll have my website link in my bios. I need to update my website for some new initiatives. But I'll be able to put my editing website information in my bios on my social media. So just kind of follow me on there, and you'll get some updates from there.
Thank you so much. Pastor Berry,
Yeah.
thank you for coming on and sharing. I think this is a really pivotal conversation about what we see digital. How can we archive? How can we be better writers for the future and going forward? And I'm for that. I think every leader should be writing some material to help their context. I'm one
Absolutely.
of those leaders. I've dropped a book about digital discipleship, a book about
Yeah.
AI,
Yep.
and I want to say a fatherhood book, and I'm dropping this other book about relationships. So I am
Love it.
too following up on my process. That's the end of my process, is the writing aspect and making sure that we
Sure.
continue the message. So you guys, thank y'all for having Pastor Berry, and we just hope that God continues to bless her and her ministry as she
I
builds.
appreciate you, man. Blessings to you too. I appreciate you.
Peace.
Peace. Peace.